Hello my dear friends, I'm Lakshmi Urs. Today I'll be explaining you all about quicksort. So let's see how this happens. The sorting happens with the help of quicksort. So the example here is 54, 26, 93, 17, 77, 31, 44, 55 and 20. So basically we have to firstly consider this example in the array form. After writing it in the array form, we have to remember three basic important things. Those are the pivot element, the front element and the rear element. Here the front element always stops at the element greater than the pivot element, and the R element, that is rear element, always stops at the smaller element than the pivot element. So let's solve this example now. Here, after taking down the example in the array form, the first element should always be considered as the pivot element. Then we have to move on to the front elements. The next element is 26. So again the front has to increment itself, as we want the element of front larger than the pivot element. Then it moves to the 93. 93 is larger than 54. So F stops over there. Then from the rear side we have to move. That is, we have to keep on decrementing until and unless we get an element smaller than the pivot element. So here the first element is 20. 20 is obviously smaller than 54. So R has to stop over there. Then at that situation F and R get swapped with each other. So 93 goes into the position of 20 and 20 comes into the position of 93. So this is how it appears. Next, again we have to start from first. 54 is the pivot element. Then F has to stop where we get the element larger than the pivot element. 26 it's not greater, 20 it's not greater, 17 it's not greater. Then the choice is 77. 77 is greater than the pivot element. So F stops over there. Then from the rear side, 93 is not smaller than 54. 55 is not smaller than 54. 55 is not smaller than 54. 44 it is smaller than 54. So R stops over there. Now F and R get swapped over here. That is, 77 comes into the position of 44 and 44 comes into the position of 77. This is how it's visible. Then we have to move to the next step. The next step over here is, again we have to start from first. 54 is the pivot element. Then we have to stop F in where we get the element larger than the pivot element. 26 it's not larger, 20 it's not larger, 17 it's not larger, 44 it's not larger, 31 it's not larger, 77 yes it's larger than 54. So we have to stop F over there. Then from the rear side, 93 it's not smaller than 54, 55 it's not smaller than 54, 77 is not smaller than 54, 31 is smaller than 54. So R should stop over here. Now the condition over here is R has crossed F. So at this situation we have to swap the pivot element with the R where it stops. So 54 gets swapped with 31 and 31 gets swapped with 54. So hence after interchanging the pivot element, that element where it changes its position is said to be the sorted element. Now here 54 is sorted. Next we have to consider left elements of 54 and right elements of 54, and we have to make separate quicksort of them. Now let's go to the left hand side first. Now here 31 is the pivot element and F we should stop at in such a position that it should be greater than the pivot element. Now 26 is not greater than 31, 20 is not greater than 31, 17 is not greater than 31, 44 is greater than 31. So F should stop over there. Now the rear side should be started. Now for R 44 is not smaller than 31. So decrement again. 17 yes it's smaller than 31, and the situation over here is R crosses F. So pivot element will come into the position of R and R's position will go into the pivot elements that array position. So 31 will be placed in the 17 and 17 will be placed in 31, and 31 becomes sorted over here. Then the next only left element is 44, that is in between 54 and 31. Obviously the element between two sorted elements will also be sorted. So 44 is also sorted. Now let's consider the right hand side. So here 74 will be the pivot element, and F has to stop in such a position that the element should be larger than 77. So 55 is not larger than 77, so it increments 9 to 93. 93 is obviously larger than 77, so F stops over there. Then R, we are checking for R. For R, 93 is not smaller than 77, so decrement again. 55. 55 is smaller than 77. And here, as R has crossed F, 77 gets into the position of R. So 77 and 55 get swapped with each other, and 77 gets sorted as pivot element is swapped. And as the pivot element is in between two different elements, those are 55 and 93, then obviously those elements are also in the sorted manner. So let's move for this now. 17, 26 and 20. As this all elements from 31 to 93 are sorted. The only three elements are 17, 26 and 20. Now let's consider 17 as the pivot element, and we have to stop F in such a position that it should be greater than the pivot element. So next element is 26. We have to stop there itself, as 26 is larger than 17. And from our side, it has to be smaller than 17. So let's check it out. 20, it's not smaller than 17. 26, it's not smaller than 17. At 17 we have to go, and R is already in the pivot's position now, so hence 17 is also in the sorted manner. So the only thing is R and this 26 and 20 should be swapped. That is, they get swapped, and here those again, that becomes in the sorted manner. So this was all about quicksort, where we have to remember just three important points, that is the pivot element, the front end and the rear end. Front should always be larger than the pivot element, and R should always be smaller than the pivot element. If we do not get the larger element for the front, we have to increment it, and if we do not get the smaller element for R, we have to decrement it. And if R and F get crossed each other, R's position should be given to the pivot element, and then that pivot element gets into the sorted order. So this was all about quicksort. I hope you all have understood it better. If you have liked my video, please hit the like button, and if you have any queries or any comments, please do comment it in the comment section. Thank you for watching my video. Bye bye.